Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Billboard Chart Guy here. Another episode of BBCG and Friends. And I'm happy to have the legend, Gearhead Mike, aka Nipplez, with us. Mike Nipplez, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. And of course, the first question to ask, how is Alba? Everything okay with you too?
Perfectly fine. Heather will be here in a moment. So,
Okay, she can confirm that.
yeah.
Okay, good, good. Well, listen, thanks for jumping on here. I appreciate it. And as always, thanks to Kirk and the Minifan Network for all the support. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm thrilled to talk to you because I know you're a big music guy, and I think we're closer in age than the last two guests I've had when they wanted to talk a bit about the late '90s and the new metal, speed metal, all of that stuff. So I think we're gonna, I think we're kind of in the same area code, so to speak, musically.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So, uh, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the area?
Yeah. So we moved around a couple times until I was about 8. And then I grew up I always say I lived in Hanson, which is Massachusetts, which is the South Shore, literally halfway between Brockton and Plymouth. So,
Okay.
I was South Shore, Massachusetts we were there for 40 years almost. So that's when I say I grew up there.
Right.
So
Gotcha. And your musical lineage. Talk to me. Was it your parents? Was it siblings?
so I was trying to think about this. I mean, when it comes to music, I'm sure my parents had music on and the radio and stuff like that. My father's favorite song, oddly enough, was White Rabbit. And if you knew my father, you would say, huh, interesting.
Okay.
Um, but again, in preparation for this, I was like, well, Friday nights with my grandmother, we would see her all the time, was Lawrence Welk. And I actually put on the Lawrence Welk show last night, and there was some drugs going on. There had to have been. They did it. It was an interpretive dance of the E.T. theme. These two people. It's kind of
Oh
wild.
my
But
God.
no, that was it. I mean, music was just on in the background. My father had some friends who were musicians. They were country musicians.
Mhm.
Uh, but like I said, when I found out that my father's his favorite song was White Rabbit, I was always like, that just doesn't compute. But then I started listening, um, you know, uh, probably one of my, well, not earliest, but one of my favorite kind of pushing me along was the Boston album, the debut album for Boston.
What year was that?
76, I believe.
76.
I believe I really kind of, I heard it on literally it was, I feel, some people will say it's Guns N' Roses, but Appetite for Destruction. But I feel that the Boston debut album was one of the first albums that I know, or that I, would say that it didn't have a miss as a
Mhm.
debut album. It didn't have a miss.
Yeah, that's an interesting take, and a lot of people agree with you. Um, I want to take a step back though, because White Rabbit, and I think we all have these kind of songs. White Rabbit to me is like nails on a chalkboard. So it's funny you were so involved in it.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that band that bothers me slash annoys me is they kept changing their name.
Mm-hmm.
Is but
Well,
but obviously they were very,
them a little bit.
yeah, they were very influential, and I know a lot of people love them, but for me, it's just not right. Boston, I mean, More Than a Feeling is a kind of a rock and roll standard across the classic rock channel, and I know there were so many other
And
songs on that album as well.
with that, the vocals for that song, when you break down just the lead vocals just for that song, you can hear the isolated, like you see online, you can find some stuff where you can hear isolated vocals and just the changes, and I mean, it was insane. But um that was kind of my, you know really where I started to listen to music. And then my next door, when we moved to Hanson, my next door neighbor, his father was a big audiophile and
Okay.
musician. So I kind of started um, gravitating more towards his house for all of our music and stuff like that. And he was in a band. And yeah, my old neighbor Scott, he was actually uh, in the late 80s, early 90s, was in a traveling touring hair metal band, and his lead singer was Greg Sharon.
Okay. Garrett, Gary's
Garrett's twin brother.
brother. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I always think it's funny because they're like, oh yeah, it's a Tunga.
What? So, just quickly, that was such a big debut album. I just pulled it up on Wikipedia. 17 million copies sold.
Yeah.
What happened after that? Was there a second album pretty quickly? But then wasn't there a
Don't look
long
back.
period? Yeah, wasn't there a long period of not too much music coming out from them?
Yeah. So basically, it after Don't Look Back, I'm actually pulling up the dates as well. There was uh oh yeah, they had a lawsuit. That's what it was. They in the early 80s they had a lawsuit, and that kind of, with bands, that kind of just shuts stuff down and everything.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
and then the third stage, which had Amanda on it.
Yep.
uh
That was like 86, 87.
yeah, it was mid to late 80s.
Mhm.
I wasn't, yeah, by then I had kind of already moved on to um hair metal and liking that kind of stuff.
Got it. Got it. Who was your favorite hair metal band of that era?
um a somewhat not obscure, because they did have a top 10 hit, um but I always go back to Kicks.
Okay.
Was probably one of my favorite, if not favorite, hair metal bands. um I also, geez, hmm I mean, I went and saw I saw Kicks for 45 years. I even, Heather and I also traveled to um their final show they ever played last year in Maryland for their final show. It was pretty awesome. They they didn't do anything that you didn't want to see. Every year they toured. They came to Mohegan Sun every single year and did an hour and a half, just all the hits. I mean,
Right.
hits is a relative term with them because you either like them or you don't.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
Did they have were they on? I don't. I'm drawing a blank. Were
they had the
what was
song "Don't Close Your Eyes" was their hit, if you want to call it that.
okay?
That was the
Oh, there it is.
yeah,
AIX. AI.
AIX. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I'd
The
have to listen to it. Yeah.
is you'd probably know it as soon as you heard it.
Okay.
Um, but that was their one big hit. But they were just flat out hair. They didn't. It was all about partying and sex and um, loud guitars and big drums and big. Uh, they were a thing. Uh,
Right. Um.
another mid 80s. The first time I ever heard it, we were driving around, was Cult's Personality by The Living Color.
Oh, that first album is tremendous. I love that album.
Yeah. The first time I ever heard it, I was like, this is wild. I mean, and then, you don't want to, but back in the mid 80s, all of a sudden it was a hair metal or a metal band with that sound. And it's for black guys that at the time was unheard of. I mean, you had them and King's X, I think, basically. But you had heavy metal, you had older metal bands, Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. But at the time, you had every single hair metal band was white
Right.
guys. You
Yeah.
know,
That was the album was Vivid.
Vivid,
and
correct.
right, and Cult of Personality was on that, and
Landlord,
right, right. Um, what's your
uh,
favorite
what's your
color?
favorite color?
Glamour Boys, yeah. That was. You're right. That was a crazy time, and so out of the ordinary to hear and see that. When you finally saw those guys, you were like, "Holy cow, wow, that was
Yeah,
incredible!" And they still tour. Vernon Reed's amazing. He's an amazing guitarist.
yeah. I saw them at the Kingston Mall. There was a place that had like they brought in bands all the
Mhm.
time, and I saw them. I don't know about 5 years ago, and they just rocked it for a solid hour and a half. Um, Also, I had a weird in the. I went to a Catholic high school, and so I was always Iron Maiden and Motley Crue and all that stuff. But I also really, really like Striper, uh,
Okay.
which was a Christian rock band. The Sweet Brothers, Michael and anyways, they're still touring. I mean, um, and it's just funny because um, a friend of mine, her husband, actually, I don't know, did some touring with them and stuff like that. So I've actually got to meet them, the members of the band, which was, you know, for a kid, you're like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Right.
And
I I got to see Living Color open for the Stones in 1989 at Shea Stadium.
oh, that was right when they were at the top.
Yeah, right at their peak for sure. And I remember being in the upper deck at Shea. I don't know if you've ever been to that stadium, but it was a very
No.
steep upper deck, and it was swaying. It was like incredible, incredible fun night with both of those bands, obviously. So was Boston the first Boston album, the first album you went out and bought, or was there something else as a young Nipplez who you went out and got?
Well, oddly enough, I didn't buy a lot of music because Scott, my next door neighbor, had it all.
Oh, right,
Uh,
right.
but I was thinking again. I was trying to think of this. What would be the first? And I know you guys were talking about the Columbia House. That was back in the '90s.
Yep.
But
Hmm.
I think one of the first albums I ever bought. I bought two albums at the same time. It was Tears for Fears and Master of Puppets.
Okay.
Those were two albums that I know I bought with my own money.
Right.
Uh,
What year did Master of Puppets come out?
I want to say 80. Uh, I'll tell you right now. Yeah, it was. Hmm.
86, it looks like.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was definitely high school. Um, and yeah, in March of '86. Actually, wasn't there like a? No, that was the '90s. That a whole bunch of albums all came out of the same thing. But yeah, it was. It, I was going to buy the Tears for Fears Shout album, and Time magazine had said that one of the music you must buy, and it was Master
Mhm.
of Puppets. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get this as well. So I did. Contrasting styles, I know.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Did you stay a Metallica fan throughout until today, or
no,
you
no, no,
no, not at all?
no,
Okay.
no. I was in high school. I was there's a alternate rock station called WBRU, and I really enjoyed alternate rock. And actually, one of your favorite bands is a band that I truly love, and that's Squeeze. Um,
Oh, yes.
you know, it's just you could put them on at any time. Squeeze Greatest Hits, you could literally put it on at any time, and it's just a fun, happy music. It doesn't, there's no, um, it's just a great, great band. But I like
Yeah,
that
I
kind of stuff and
love them.
The Cure and Echo and the Bunnymen and that kind of stuff. And BRU kind of shifted from new wave um, to grunge. It never had hard rock. It only had new age, and then moved into grunge and alternative. But one of my favorite bands that I never owned their albums, but I would listen to them constantly as Talking Heads. I would say Psycho Killer is one of my favorite just individual songs by a band that had many, 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 many great songs.
Yeah. So it's interesting with it's Talking Heads, and I guess everybody has a band um, where they're not as familiar. The radio songs, but that's a band that everybody loves, everybody talks about, everybody respects. But I've never dug deep and spent a lot of time with the albums. I've just been a pure kind of, whatever's on the
You
radio,
hear what you
and,
hear.
and I love it. And of course, Stop Making Sense is one of the great live concert movies of all time. But I never kind of, and I guess they broke up, well, 85, probably 86.
The Tom Tom Club came out in 80. Tom Tom Club. I want
Well,
to
they
say
had the Little Creatures album, which came out when I was in college. So I think that was 84 or 85, which had all those hits.
the 81 actually is when the Genius of Love came out
Okay.
for Tom Tom Club. So that's just a Genius of Love is just a fantastic song.
Yeah.
But it's a one-off. I don't really know any of their other stuff.
Yeah. What was your first concert?
It was at Great Woods, which is in Mansfield, Mass. It was
Yep.
Starship with the outfield opening.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And I was more excited about the outfield than Starship. I mean, they might have been Jefferson. No. It was one of the iterations of them. It might have been Jefferson Starship still at the time, or it might have just been Starship.
What Your Love, was that the big outfield song?
Correct. Yep.
I don't want to lose your love tonight. Use your love.
Correct. Some people call it Josie.
Right.
Or, that's the local radio call for the Patriots. Scott Zolak, the former quarterback, always, he got them to play that when they score a touchdown back in there when Patriots were winning and good. That was their, one of their things was, but yeah, it was Outfield with Your Love. That was the first concert I ever went to. It was pretty fun.
Did they have any other hits, or was that pretty much their biggest song?
You would classify them as a one-hit wonder.
Okay.
Again, they Say It Isn't So. I'm looking right now. No, they were called them a one-hit wonder. They had minor. I bet you they probably didn't even crack top 50 or even top 75s. I don't know. I don't know the Billboard charts like Billboard chart guy, but no, they had you would call them a one-hit wonder, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, that Great Woods. So I've been there once to see Springsteen.
Okay.
But I know a lot of my spots so far have referenced Great Woods. Obviously, a lot of New England folk. What's your favorite concert of all time?
Favorite concert of all time, and probably the loudest concert I've ever been to.
Okay.
Was Filter at this place called Lupo's in Providence.
Okay.
Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel. It was a smaller venue. No, it was good size because there's 2 levels. And Filter, it was literally the loudest concert I'd ever been to. And they opened up with Hey Man, Nice Shot. And the song just starts and just the entire place went bonkers. And it was so loud. It was just, going right through you. But I always think about it and say that's probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to. Another one would have been, again, another one that you guys were talking about. But I went in 1989 at the Hartford Civic Center. I caught a Grateful Dead show. But I got a job at the Hartford Civic Center because I was a Hartford Whalers fan.
Okay.
So I was working security, so I was up in the catwalks, which to see the show, and it was I probably got a contact high because that was peak dead.
Right. Yeah.
And at that time they were still really really tight. So
Did you see them a lot before Jerry passed, or just
I
once?
only saw them. I saw them 3 days in a row. They played 3 nights, I believe. 3 nights or 2 nights. I saw them twice, but I think they played 3 nights altogether. I only saw them twice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I currently, I've gone all genres of music. I was stationed in the Army at Fort Campbell, Kentucky in the early 90s. So I caught on to Clint Black, um, George Strait, Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, that kind of stuff. And that's really all you hear over there. And so I started really becoming a fan of that. But then when I got back home after the Army, I started really diving into more of the grunge. And I've always been pretty open when it comes to music. It's because of a weekend. I hate Tom Petty because we were driving, me and three of my friends were driving to Atlanta for the weekend.
Yeah.
And 20 minutes into the trip, my friend hit a pothole and Tom Petty's greatest hits got stuck in the radio in the car CD player. And for 4 days, that's the only music we had.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, hey, it's his greatest hits, but yeah. And I've just always just like, if I never hear Tom Petty, I'm okay.
Oh my God.
It was it was like a bad joke after a while because we were like, we didn't notice it was happening until my friend tried to pop the CD out. He's like, oh, it's not coming out. And then it started playing again. And 2 hours into the drive, 3 hours, because I think it was a 7-hour drive each way, plus the weekend. It was 3 days of Tom Petty. And I'm like, but all right.
It's funny. I was probably 15 or 16, and I drove to Florida with my best friend at the time, and his father drove us. Now, his father's first name was Guido. He's straight off the boat from Italy. And this man from the Catskills in New York State to Cocoa Beach, Florida, we had to listen to Pavarotti.
Oh.
Over, and the man would sing it every time like he was he was on stage at the Met. And I tell you, from New York to Florida, it was Pavarotti. So I certainly feel your pain. And all of a sudden Tom Petty's not so bad, right?
Well, that's definitely a thing. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. um what what concert have you and Heather seen most recently?
We saw Goose at the MGM Grand, MGM Fenway.
Okay.
I love Goose.
Yeah, talk to me about Goose for a minute, because I've I've gotten I'm dipping my toe into that water.
Okay.
Give
So
me a little feedback.
so and again, something that you spoke with Sean last week. Goose Rick Mita, I can't. He's got a wild last name, but his vocals are a young, uh, I know I'm drawing a blank. No, not like, Jackson Brown. If you listen to them, there's two lead singers. They kind of alternate back and forth for the most part.
Right,
But
the keyboardist and the guitar.
Keyboardist, yeah, exactly. But the guitar player Rick, he sounds like a young Jackson Brown in a lot of songs.
Okay.
And it's awesome. And the thing is them and Humphreys McGee, which is another one of my all-time favorites.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I think Springsteen's the same way. They've never played two shows back to back. They've never played two shows ever that have been the same show. Like,
Right.
You go to some people and they have their set of music. They're playing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
these guys, Humphreys McGee's played 2,600 shows. They've never had a repeat. They've never had basically a song repeat. Same thing with Goose. They're extended jams. There's a lot of covers, a lot of great covers. They've got excellent harmonies between the keyboard player Pete and the guitar player Rick. They kind of go back and forth off each other. There's a song called Silver Rising where they kind of they start, it almost builds up, and then they start, going back and forth with each other, and they'll start playing extended jam, and 7-8 minutes later, all of a sudden they hit back in and come back in with the vocal, right back into the song. And it's just how tight they are. But, them, Humphreys McGee, I like Sturgill Simpson is a great live show as well. Who is obviously, he's more of a traditional country singer, but has a fantastic, he does a great cover of LA Woman. But they really just, because they're so, every show is so different.
Mm-hmm.
I belong, that's kind of I have nugs.net, which is an app.
Yeah, so do I.
Yep. Okay, so you got Nugs. Okay, so literally they play all the, they'll do their shows through them all the time. They're updated. Humphreys updates the next day. Goose usually updates maybe a day or two later. I know Springsteen, does he still do it? Post there
when he's on tour, each show gets uploaded, maybe a day or 18 hours later, and then when he's not touring, once a month he's putting out an old show.
Oh, okay.
Like a classic show.
Yeah, it's that, whoever thought of that, it's such a simple, it would be great, I'm going to create an app where bands can post their music.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? And it's the same thing with Spotify. I want to, create an app where people can, what music do you want? I want every single song ever recorded at any time in history. Are you going to pay for it? Well, I think there was a comedian who was like, I don't want to pay for it, but if I do, you won't give me commercials. So, but Nugs is that way. I have it up all the time. Actually, what's on my right now? The February 6th Goose show from Milwaukee, Wisconsin is up. So,
well, I know they're coming to New Hampshire this summer. So I'm thinking about making the trip. What I've heard, I really like, and I know they do some interesting covers as well.
Yeah, they do. They do Shamalama Ding Dong. They do. You know what? Like I said, if you listen to the singer Rick, like I said, he's got that. I just close my eyes and I can hear a young Jack, but they've never done a Jackson Browne song, and it always is. It's kind of like, I wonder why.
And they're from Connecticut, so
correct. Yeah, they're from
like a local
Wilton, Connecticut, and they kind of burst on the scene. They've always been together for 10 years.
I think they're playing the Garden next month, Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, they sold out a couple shows. I think 3 shows at the Garden, but the first time they played the Garden was with Trey Anastas from Fish.
Yep.
He had he was doing his own solo tour, and they were the opening band for him for the whole thing. So that's really, that helps out with that type of music when you're going out with, arguably, one of it's Grateful Dead and then Fish. I'm not a Fish fan personally. So
same here.
I love the Grateful Dead. And the Dead and Company. You're talking about John Mayer last week and stuff.
Yeah.
But I really, because of the fact that, Goose and Humphreys, they play 3-hour shows. You can just kind of get lost, stick it in the background, and let it go. But that's really kind of where but I do listen to all types of music. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So do I. So do I. And it depends on the day, depends on the week.
mhm,
My top five, top six is constantly changing. So,
absolutely.
yeah, which is good. I mean, I love all that 70s pop and I've mentioned I grew up listening to disco too and obviously grunge and new waves. Yeah, so if it's good music, it's good music. So
Yeah.
and it's great to be aware and have a working knowledge of all of it. So
Yeah,
it's
oddly enough, my introduction to grunge was by a mistake because um, WFNX, which is a local station, put out a mixed tape back in the late 80s. I think it was 89 or something like that. And I wanted to get it because Susie Sue and the Banshees had a song on it,
okay.
Kiss Them For Me.
I
But
remember that song, sure.
there was a little song called Smells Like Teen Spirit on there.
Ah,
And, and I was like, this is why it was like nothing you'd ever heard before.
absolutely. Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
friends hated it. I loved it. And then it was just from there.
Yeah. That was another one of those songs that just exploded
Mm-hmm.
into the universe. It was just incredible. It's so different. And I've said this before, and I'm not the biggest hair metal guy at all, but I mean, that just kind of changed the trajectory of rock and roll at that
Mm-hmm.
particular moment. Completely, kind of uh, made the hair metal bands kind of take a step back for sure.
It killed that song killed hair metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Unreal. Well, listen, I'll let you go.
All right.
I
I appreciate
really, oh, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you. Love your posts on X and Twitter. I love your sunrises in the morning. Some days they give me a little inspiration, a little kick in the ass,
it.
and really, really appreciate the time. So thank you so much for joining me.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me and have a great day.
Yeah, you too. And thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Bye.